Fresh and Buds is brought to you by our proud sponsor, Reinar's Rentals, which is your number one place in Wraith to find excellent deals on rentals on clubs, axes, maybe even rocks. This is one of the best places, the greatest rates, and guess what, folks? No late fees on any of these weapons from Reinar's Rentals, the number one rental store in Wraith, the Savage Lands. It does not matter. I would recommend this store for all of your rental needs, basically forever and ever. It is one of the best, and I am proud to announce that they are a sponsor of this show. And without further ado, we're going to get to the show right now. Kick it.
Fresh and
all right, welcome back to another episode of Fresh and Buds. I am your host, Tommy Fresh, and you are all of my buds as always. And today we have a very special episode for you all. It is the eve before the World Championship of Flesh and Blood, and you know what? It's a busy time. I decided to not bring on a guest, right? Instead, I asked the community their opinions on what's going to happen at Worlds. Now, please do not change your radios, do not change your Spotifys, do not change your YouTubes right now. Just because I don't have a guest doesn't mean that these community members, that some of you might know these names, don't have some interesting takes here, as well as myself. So if you're listening right before Worlds, or if you're listening during Worlds, or if you're listening after Worlds, it's going to be fun to kind of see who was right, who was wrong, and why was it Tommy Fresh the whole time. But we have a great episode for you all, and before we do that, I do want to give a shout out to a couple things. First of all, check out my other podcast that I do with my cousin Matty Juice called Fresh Juice, where we review indie video games. Very cool. I'll plug the rest of that at the end. The Twitter, the Buds Discord, all of that stuff I'll mention at the end, and all be in the show notes. But I think we should really get to the meat and potatoes of this episode. Now, normally if I had a guest, I would ask how they're doing and what's new and what's going on with their life. I don't have a guest. So I'm going to ask myself what's going on. And I do have a story before we get to the Flesh and Blood festivities. And I just think this is funny. It's kind of the ridiculousness of friendship and the weird things that we do in friendship, or in the event of perhaps a friendship being on the fritz. Now, I have two friends. I have more than two friends, but I do have two friends in this story, right? One we're going to call Mr. Containers, right? I already recorded this already and accidentally said Mr. Containers' real name, and I don't want to do that. So, Mr. Containers is one of the friends. The other friend, we're going to call Mr. I Love Lucy, okay? That has nothing to do with their real names, but these are the code names we're going to give to them today for this episode. Now, Mr. I Love Lucy did something wrong, right? You know, we all make mistakes. We all do this stuff. I've done it before. We all have. Now, this mistake, unfortunately, really upset Mr. Containers, right? So Mr. Containers was like, you know what? Mr. I Love Lucy is just... He went too far. I'm really upset. And guess what? We're fighting, and I'm not talking to him anymore. All right. And we were all like, this is crazy. We've all known each other since we were wee lads. We were just little tykes, right? Just small little Mr. Freshes, Mr. Containers, and Mr. I Love Lucy's running around. We all used to live like right next to each other at one point. And that was like a pretty shocking thing for Mr. Containers to say. Like, wow, he's like, this was the thing that broke the camel's back, the straw that broke the camel's back here, where he's so upset that he does not want to talk to Mr. I Love Lucy anymore. Now, myself and some other friends who aren't involved in this story, except for the fact that we went to Mr. I Love Lucy and we were like, hey man, This is, you messed up, right? And we understand that, and we're not super happy about it either. We want you to get better, and we want you to progress from here and hopefully make things right. But, it's pretty messed up that you and Mr. Containers aren't talking right now. And, we've all known each other for 30 years. We got to make this right. We got to figure out a way that you can mend this relationship with Mr. Containers. And Mr. I Love Lucy said, what are you talking about? So that's the craziest thing to me, that Mr. I Love Lucy had no idea that Mr. Containers was like, I'm not talking to you anymore, which is really funny to me because he just said it and then didn't talk to him and then did not let him know that he was upset. So Mr. I Love Lucy is sitting there thinking everything's hunky-dory because Mr. Containers didn't want to say that he was upset. He's just like, actually, you know what? I'm taking this stand, but you don't know about it. But guess what? I'm taking it. So that's very funny to me. And I guess the moral of the story is probably communication, right? And hey, listen, I know a little bit about communication. I have a podcast, which is, means that I am an expert on communication, obviously, as I sit here and talk to myself to a microphone, but not to myself, to a legion of buds. What are it, tens of thousands of you out there, which, obviously I love every single one of you, and I'm glad that you're listening. I just wish what you could. I know you're screaming at the radio right now saying, Tommy, that's so crazy. I can't believe that your friends are like that. But believe it, and sometimes it extends from maybe a little bit of stubborn masculinity, right? So that's another lesson. Not that I'm an expert on fixing any of that, but I just wanted to share that before we get to these meat and potatoes of Flesh and Blood and the World Championship. Now, basically what I did this week was I reached out to both the Buds Discord and Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it and said, hey, what are your predictions? What are your hot takes on what's going to happen at the World Championship this weekend? Because there is a lot of talk right now, right? So first, we saw a huge showing from Dashio at Melbourne. And that kind of set the world on fire a little bit in terms of what's going on with the meta. And then we got the battle-hardened Pittsburgh. And that was this past weekend. Very exciting because we saw a huge showing from Reinar, from Sexy Dexy from Central Pennsylvania, Rockin' Reinar, as well as Pro Tour winner Michael Fang. And, it was a big, big surprise, I think, for a lot of people that Reinar had such a big showing. Now, Dex had said on Twitter, this is not an accurate representation of the meta. This is Pennsylvania. This is Savage Lands. This is where brutes come to play. And, part of me says, you know what? I believe that. I think outside of Michael Fang, he said that every other player that was playing brute was from Pennsylvania. So take that with a grain of salt. However, that being said, Dex, I will say that I think that does not mean that Reinar or brute in general cannot go the distance in this meta, because we saw it do well into a lot of different things. I think Icelander ended up winning the event. Now, Icelander is one of those decks that can really prey on a deck like Reinar that really needs the resources. So, that's just the way things shake out in Flesh and Blood. Sometimes you have these decks that can prey on certain decks that can also prey on a lot of decks. So, certain different creams will rise to the top based on how things shake out in Gem and the matchups, and especially in the top 8. Now, all that being said, that kind of sets the stage for the World's tournament this weekend in Barcelona. Now, as I am sitting here, it is the night before this episode airs. I know that a lot of folks are in Barcelona getting ready, doing their drafts. Now, obviously, draft is a huge component of this tournament. So we're only going to be talking about what our predictions are for CC. But we do have to keep in mind that the better limited players will have a certain edge in terms of their record throughout both days leading into the top 8. So we got to keep that in mind. However, we're going to get a little crazy here. So I thought the best way to kind of start this off was do a fresh faves, right? I do a fresh fave with every guest that comes on, whether it is a fresh fave for every single set that's ever been released, or if they had been on before, we'll do the most recent set. So I thought today I'm going to do a fresh fave for myself, which, I always give my input here and there, but today I'm going to do a world's fresh fave. So what does this mean? I'm going to give my predictions on each category, which hero I think, or which category will surprise the general public here, the viewers. What hero is going to surprise people, what weapon is going to surprise people, what equipment, what run-of-the-mill card is going to surprise people. So these are the cards that we're going to be talking about, right? Maybe not after, but especially during the tournament when things are kind of shaking out, like, oh my God, did you see that feature match? This card really performed better than we thought. This hero really performed better than we thought. So these are my picks for that. Now, let's start off with the world's fresh faves. Now, first and foremost, we have who is my favorite hero for the world's meta this weekend. And I got to say, I'm going to say, based on a lot of mechanologists kind of popping up, Dash.io, even Max making some splashes here, Reinar kind of like coming in here, and just like these classic attacking heroes, you know me. It's either going to be Leviathan or Riptide, and my pick is Riptide this weekend. I know this deck can go the distance. It has some really bad matchups, right? Icelander being one of them. We had already mentioned Icelander. But if Riptide can avoid the Icelanders, right? And this is a tournament where it can, right? It doesn't have, like, you have, if the player that's playing Riptide has a really good limited grasp on Bright Light's draft, I think Riptide can go the distance in the constructed rounds, right? And you can kind of get in the position where you don't run into a lot of Icelanders, or at least hope not to. And then maybe you'll run into them in the top 8. But Riptide has the extreme ability to make a big splash this weekend. I'm excited. I love Riptide right now. Like, I've been jamming a lot of Riptide. It sounds crazy. It sounds like copium or whatever the kids are saying these days. But these traps, especially Tar Pit Trap, right? When Dash.io flashes out a boom grenade on a boosted attack and you just go Tar Pit Trap and the boom grenade doesn't trigger because of the Tar Pit Trap text and you dealt a damage to them, you just feel like you're just really doing it. So I really like Riptide right now, and obviously has some great matchups into anything else. Not anything else, but a lot of other things. So that's my pick to surprise people this weekend. That does not mean that I think it's going to win, but it will certainly be the talk of the town where people are like, okay, we underestimated this hero. Okay, let's move on to my favorite weapon for this weekend. My weapon of choice this weekend that is going to surprise people is the Hanabi Blaster. Now, you might be thinking, Tommy, why the Hanabi Blaster? We've seen a lot of other mech heroes use other things that are weapons that are just better, more efficient, or whatever. I feel like we're going to see some tech. It's not going to, I don't think it will be main board per se in a lot of these mech decks. But the problem with mech, and we see it even in Bright Light's draft, is that, when you're boosting away your life, you can get fatigued pretty easily. And one of the best ways, in my opinion, to beat fatigue is to have some sort of evasion. And overpower is a great form of evasion and is easily attainable in a lot of these boost-centric decks with the Hanabi Blaster. It might not make the biggest splash, but if I see some play into some rough matchups, I think that these Dash IO or Max Nitro or even OG Dash decks can kind of get over the top, right? Sometimes all it takes is for you to just break through a really efficient blocking turn from your opponent to start to regain the momentum, because sure, they can block really efficiently, but they can only block so much. And I think if you can get just a little bit of damage through, right? It doesn't even matter. Like, just like that 5 overpower is just enough sometimes. And I think that Hanabi Blaster could be the key in a lot of those rough matchups. That being said, I don't know if the mech heroes really shine this weekend, but if we see it on stream, I could see Hanabi Blaster being a real key piece in some rough matchups for those decks. And with that being said, let's talk about equipment. And this is an equipment that, gosh, it used to be really expensive, folks. I remember buying my first one 2 years ago, over 2 years ago at this point. This is Arcanite Skullcap, right? This used to be the key headpiece well before Crown of Providence ever existed. Now, Crown of Providence has become the key headpiece for Flesh and Blood, especially CC, as of late. But I gotta say, Arcanite Skullcap, has a higher skill cap, right? And Worlds is the best players in the world. And if you can get a minimum of 3 block out of it, great. But also, if Wizard just makes a big presence, because it has the potential to, Arcanite Skullcat could be the key, right? You kind of take some damage here, but then all of a sudden you get the AB3, right? Once you get a little bit low, right? And especially for like Bravo doesn't hate having AB3, right? A lot of blues, and that is a great way to kind of put the kibosh on Kano or Icelander. So I could see it finding a slot in a lot of these decks that can really utilize the AB3. And I would not be shocked if we see it on stream as well. This could be something that is a key point in preventing the Wizard back-to-back championship, which we're going to get to. Actually, somebody predicted something like that, but they were a little bit vague, so we don't know which Wizard. But this could be a huge piece, right? Let's not forget about classic Flesh and Blood. Arcanite Skullcap is classic Flesh and Blood. It blocks well. Sure, you got to make sure you're a little bit lower health, not wealth, but when you understand that card, and a lot of these players do, they can really gain the best value out of it. So look out for Arcanite Skullcap. It sounds like a crazy pick for my world's fresh favorite of equipment, but it could be the key. Now, one thing that's been absent of this conversation so far is the Boogeyman, right? The Boogeyman is the Empress of Drakai. It is Dromai, right? The Dragon Queen, right? This deck is extremely good right now, especially with the new tome. And a lot of folks expect it to be the one of the top performers and one of the best decks in the format. Now, we haven't seen it really convert like post ProQuest season, but that doesn't mean that we're not going to see some of the best players in the world try to crack this, including Mara Ferris, who is a top 8 Pro Tour competitor and excellent Dromai player. So I would not be surprised if we saw that. So that being said, my favorite run-of-the-mill card, your attack action, non-attack action, instant items, defense reactions, whatever, is Down and Dirty, right? This card is a real beating for Dromai. It is a great way to steal tempo without losing your hand or even giving up anything in your hand. Throw that thing in the arsenal, pop a dragon, get your turn with a full grip. It is a excellent tool in that matchup, and the beautiful thing about it can be played in any deck. Now, a lot of decks can't efficiently play it as well, which is fine, and you know, that's okay. You might not see it in those decks, but the decks that can will play Down and Dirty, and it can really swing the game back in their favor, or at least make the matchup not so abysmal, because that's the problem with Dromai, right? There are so many decks that have an abysmal time going into Dromai, right? Riptide's one of them, right? It was a lot worse before we got the not Brave Forge Bracers, the Bullseye Bracers back, which is a help, but it's not like the best thing. The only thing that helps is like kind of, because you gotta race it, right? You guys like, all right, maybe I'll pop a dragon here or there with my death touches or whatever, but I have to race this deck, and I need something like a Bullseye Bracers to have like a really huge turn to really close it out, or swing the tempo so hard in my favor that it's hard for them to regain any kind of stable footing in the match. So I think Down and Dirty is a card that will help even out a lot of those Dromai matchups, right? And I expect to see a couple of them play or block from Arsenal this weekend, right? That's a big bet on my part, but I wouldn't be surprised at all. So those are my world's fresh faves. Obviously, sound off in the comments if you agree, disagree, or think I am a genius, which I'm certainly not. But hey, listen, book it, folks. This is the truth until it's not. And then it was just a bit. But let's get to the community. The community, first of all, is one of the best things about this game. I've said it a million times. I'll say it a million more times. And I'm very fortunate, very lucky to have an excellent community within this podcast, which is a subset of this game. And the first couple of predictions here are coming from the Buds Discord, which this is a great time to kind of plug the Buds Discord. It is a very friendly, very open, very inviting, very safe place for a lot of Flesh and Blood folks to hang out. And the Buds is a great Discord, so please check it out. It is in the link tree below. And you know, I try to be as active as I can, but life and work is crazy. So you know, maybe I'm not always active, but that doesn't mean other awesome buds aren't active and will answer questions or just chat. You know, it's a great place. So first of all, let's get to these predictions and see. I'm gonna be like rating them, right? I'm gonna be maybe burning some folks. Only the ones that I'm really comfortable with. But speaking of being very comfortable with, someone I hung out with this past weekend, it's always nice to hang out with a fan. It was Gary, aka Mr. Viz. And Mr. Viz, very simple prediction here. Very wacky prediction. Jack-o'-lantern Vincent was his prediction. Now, what I asked was which hero and which player is going to win Worlds. I did not give my favorite player yet. I'll give it at the end. That's what you have to wait for. Jack-o'-lantern Vincent. I gotta remember what Jack-o'-lantern does. Jack-o'-lantern banishes the top card of your deck, and if it was the color that it coordinates with, you get a rune chant, I believe. And obviously that works with Vincent because you want to banish some stuff and rune gate it out and yada yada yada. Gary, I think this is very bold of you, right? I think Vincent can be a very powerful deck, right? I think that's the best way to put it. It can be. Is it often the most powerful deck in the room? No, it's not. And I gotta say, throwing Jack-o'-lantern in there, I don't think it's gonna really help it, but maybe in the hands of a master, right? Maybe Zach Bunn or something like that. Somebody who just really knows. Maybe Pablo Pintor, who won a Pro Tour with a Shadowrun Blade. That could be the key, right? You need someone like Mr. Pintor. Pablo, shout out Pablo. We love Pablo. A hometown world championship or not hometown, home country world championship for Pablo. So all eyes are on him. Obviously, now Jack-O-Lantern Vincent, I don't think this is the answer, Gary. I have to say, I don't want to come down on this prediction, but I think it's wrong. But I would love to be proven wrong myself. I would love to be proven right as well, because I am an egomaniac. But that is a story for another podcast where I am just rambling into a microphone, which we're going to continue to do. Gary, great prediction. Thank you for writing in, and we all love you, and we hope you're doing very well. Moving on to another key member of Fresh and Buds, although I'm hearing that we lost this person to the Attack Action podcast, and I'm also hearing that I have been taken by the Attack Action podcast at this point. This is Greg, aka Darth Prentice, who, used to produce the show. Life got busy. He has babies, okay, folks? I know that the hate mail's been coming in about Greg not being on the show, and I try to explain he has babies, folks. He has children he needs to care for. So lay off the hate mail. It's okay, Greg. I've been reading it for you. You don't have to read all the really nasty comments that have been there, and also the even nastier comments now that you are doing stuff for the Attack Action podcast. Whatever. We don't care. I don't care. But Greg says his prediction is Slagan White, which is a really great nickname for Dagan White. Slagan White on Mechanoid Max. Okay. A lot to unpack here, Greg. I love this prediction. First of all, I love the nickname for Dagan, right? Dagan, obviously, a huge bud. Huge fan of Dagan. And on top of that, you threw in a deck that I'm a huge fan of, Mechanoid Max. So let's first break it down, Dagan White. Dagan White is certainly a contender this weekend. However, he might be hindered. He might be hindered by his I guess, predisposition to want to play Bravo. I think is the best way to put it. And I think that might be the nail in the coffin for Dagan. I don't think Bravo is the deck for the tournament. That being said, Dagan is someone who could do it. No doubt. But I will say, Dagan could also really do it with Mechanoid Max. This is the deck that if there was a deck that was built for using the Nitro Mechanoid, it was Max Nitro. Max the Hype Nitro, right, folks? This deck actually makes it work, which is really cool. Like, we all saw people try to make the Nitro Mechanoid work when it was originally released in Dynasty with the original Dash. Now, sure, we all hoped that we would get an alternate art Nitro Mechanoid with Max in the Mechanoid. We didn't get it. Unfortunately, LSS, I know you're listening. We appreciate your support, but maybe get that for us. And this deck is really fun, and it ends up being more of a sideboard plan, I guess, for the deck to be really competitive. And I could see it playing really well. It's just unfortunately not the most powerful Mechanologist deck right now, right? Dash-EO is one of the better ones, right? The things that you can do with Dash-IO are pretty obscene, while hindered with a lot of insane variants. So I like this pick, Greg. I would love to see it spike a little bit. It definitely can. I just don't think Slagan White's going to be playing it, unfortunately. Dagan, if you don't win Worlds this year, clip this. Take a look. You should have played Mechanoid Max, and maybe you could have done it. But we still love you, buddy. Next prediction comes from William Knuckles from The Table Pit. Excellent UPF YouTube channel. I implore you all to check it out. And also the episode that William was on. I forget which number it was, but it was only within the last 10 episodes, I think. But William has a prediction for us all. First, he says, Mara Ferris. We just mentioned Mara. But he also says, but also Rhinar, right? So we know that Mara is not going to play Rhinar. So this is William kind of hedging his bets, maybe cheating a little bit. That's all right. We still love you, buddy. Mara is certainly a favorite in this tournament. This could be Dromai's meta, and if it's Dromai's meta, Mara is the person to do it, right? This is her time to shine. And who could be mad? Mara's the best. We all love Mara. Check out her episode of Fresh and Buds. I forget which episode it was. It was a while ago. We'll get her back on after she wins Worlds. If she never wins Worlds, sorry, Mara. You're just dead to me. I'm kidding, but also I really do like this Rhinar prediction. We talked about Pittsburgh, and Dex said that it was just Pennsylvania. It's not reflective of the real meta, yada, yada, yada. Listen, I don't care. It showed what the deck could do. Michael Fang was on it. Pro Tour winner Michael Fang was on it. So it obviously has some juice, right? And I think that we have to pay attention to it as buds, as fresh buds. We need to pay attention to things like that. And Rhinar winning is not that crazy, right? I know that we all talk down on Brute. Not all of us. I'm talking it up, obviously, but I think a lot of people talk down on Brute. But people forget, like, the calling San Jose. Rhinar wins, right? This is not, like, that's a huge tournament. That was in conjunction with the last Worlds tournament. Sure, maybe some of your best players in the world weren't playing it, but that being said, like half of them were because maybe they didn't convert to day 2 of Worlds. So let's keep that in mind, folks. Rhinar has some of the best cards, the best ability in the game in Intimidate, literally puts it in a box where they are afraid to print new Brute cards because of it. So let's keep it in mind. I think Mara Ferris is a better bet than Rhinar, but I would not be surprised to see if Rhinar makes a big spike. Thank you, William, for your input. Next comes from another wonderful content creator, Tom from Big Boss Book Club. I've been on his podcast. Excellent little podcast. Excellent British bloke from across the pond. His prediction is Zach Bunn on Bravo. Now, I mentioned Zach Bunn earlier because I know he has done well with Roomblade in the past. Bravo. Interesting. I've already said this is not Bravo's tournament. But that being said, in the right hands, like Dagan White, Slagan White, or Zach Bunn, or somebody that we're going to see later on this list, it could be the time for Bravo. I don't want to completely dismiss it. I know that I dropped the hammer a little hard on Bravo earlier, but this could be, Tom, you might be onto something. Zach Bunn, certainly a great player. Team Covenant, Wolfpack, all that fun stuff. Team Covenant, by the way, what's the origin of that name, Zach? Come on the podcast, we'll talk about it, folks. DM Zach Bunn and get him to come on the podcast. But Bravo, I don't see Zach Bunn on Bravo. But listen, I've been surprised before. I don't see Michael Fang on Rhinar, and all of a sudden he's top 8ing Battleharden Pittsburgh with Rhinar. Now, if there are two things that are in conjunction with Flesh and Blood, it's Michael Fang and top 8ing a Battleharden. I would say that is, par for the course. Next big prediction here comes from Andrew, who says Leroy Jenkins. This was a little bit of a troll, I think, Andrew, and I don't appreciate it. Obviously, I still put it in the show notes, so you know what? Chums up. Let's do this. Next, we have Capolo, who was on the show last week, who says, System Reset Dashio. I don't think this is Dash.io's tournament. I think we're going to see a lot of it because it's certainly a powerful deck. I don't know if System Reset Dash.io is the deck. But Cap, hey, listen, you know better than most on the mechanologist front. So I'm going to say maybe. That would be interesting, right? We see a lot of Dash.ios and not the ones that we expect rise to the top. It could be something like System Reset. But who knows? I'm very wary about Dash.io. I don't like when you have to run items and stuff like that. Like, sure, they don't block, and sure, I run a lot of brute decks, but you want the items on top of your deck. You don't want them in your hand. Like, at least if there's a brute card that doesn't block in your hand, you intend on playing it and getting some value. Not that you can't get value from these items from Dash.io from your hand, but it's just it doesn't play as well, I don't think, especially if you're on the back foot. So we'll see. I could be coming a little too hard on the Dash.ios of the world. But Cap, thank you for your submission. You didn't say a person. A lot of these people didn't, but we all know who it's going to be, and I'm going to reveal who's going to win Worlds at the end of this show. Next comes from Kale from Dead Summer Art. Obviously, huge bud comes on for all of our lore needs, and Dead Summer Art came out swinging with Sasha Markovich on Kano. Whoa. The first wizard we've gotten in this conversation. Kano could be in a real great spot. That's why I said Arcanite Skullcap could be in a great spot. Because of how good Kano might be in this meta, right? I think people underestimate how good this deck can be. You know, we saw it at Pro Tour 1 in New Jersey, right? Like, Kano took that tournament by storm. Sure, it didn't win in the end, but like, God, it got really, really close. And that being said, like, it only takes a few things to change in that tournament where Kano wins, and Pablo Pintor didn't send Chain to Living Legend, right? So I think this is not a bad bet. This might be the most sound bet outside of William saying Mar Ferris and Greg saying Slagan White. I think this might be the most sound bet I've heard from the community, right? Dead Summer, I think this is, I don't even know if Sasha's playing, but if Sasha is playing, this could be the pick of the podcast. And if that's the case, you all better clip this right now, send it to your friends, send it to your parents, send it to your family, and show everybody at Thanksgiving next week whilst you eat your turkey, or if you're from abroad, just hang out on a Thursday. Pretty cool that you can do that too. Great pick, Dead Summer. Great. The next one I also really like. This is another pick that I saw, and a little smirk came on my face. Smithville Gaming, famous for the Commoner League, awesome, just amazing. Been on the show. Check out his episode. Smithville says, Fi, first ninja mentioned, it's worth noting, and Pat Eschke. Pat, who has also been on the podcast, check out Pat's episode. Pat is an incredible player, and I Pat plays a lot of slower fatigue decks and stuff like that, but I could sense that he wants to pop off on like huge turns and do some crazy combo stuff, which Fi has the ability to do. It's the reason I didn't make top 8 at Battlehardened Columbus a couple months ago. Time has no meaning, and it is pretty incredible the amount of damage that deck can output. Right? We've all seen it. We saw it in many different metas, and this could be yet another meta in which it can do it. So I really like this pick. Fi Pat Eschke. Pat Eschke is a great player, a great person. Huge fan of Pat. Pat, if you're listening, we love you. And when you win Worlds, you always have a place on this show. And we're all pulling for you. And if it's on Fi, that would be pretty crazy. Although, I kind of imagine you bringing Bravo or something similar. Maybe even this Fatigue, or not Fatigue Reiner, but like the Reinar that has the very able ability to fatigue. Next, we have a comment from Az from Go Again Gaming. You all know Az, been on the show multiple times, is from the Living Legends podcast and his own YouTube channel, which is Go Again Gaming. Az says, this has nothing to do with Worlds. In typical Az fashion, love you, buddy, I'm going to take the Living Legend Battle Harden with Azalea. Watch out. Oh boy. We have our first Living Legend format, big tournament this weekend in Barcelona. It is a Battle Harden, and Az is calling his shot, folks. Az is taking Azalea. He's representing the Azalea cult. Now, Az, I gotta say a few things. First of all, I hope you do. Right? That is first and foremost. I want you to win this tournament with all my heart. But I know, and I know you, we need a couple things from you first. Number one, I know you're playing a game of footy or soccer or football with a lot of other creators over in Barcelona this week. Be careful. It's hard to focus with a hurt ankle, right? We don't want you physically hurt for this tournament, right? You can't do it if you're in shambles, my friend. 2, I don't know the schedule of the weekend, but I would assume the Battle Harden's on Sunday. Excuse me. And Saturday is a great night, right? A lot of the Worlds players, maybe who didn't make top 8, they still had a great day, maybe finished like top 64 or something like that. And a lot of folks want to like enjoy their last weekend night out in Spain. And I'm sure you will want to as well as. And I know, much like myself, you enjoy a little bit of a drink here and there. So if you're playing in the Living Legends Battle Harden on Sunday, which I think it is that day, I'm not sure. You all can correct me, and it doesn't matter because it's fine. You got to not get super hungover. Don't be super hungover, right? I've tried, right? Then again, last time I played a tournament hungover was with Matthew McGinnis, a.k.a. Chuck, and Ethan Van Sant, a.k.a. Mansant, in a team sealed in Columbus. And we got second. We got second in that tournament. That was pretty cool. So maybe do get hungover. Actually, I take it all back. Have a great time Saturday and just kill it on Sunday, my friend. We all love you. We're all rooting for you. Next comment comes from Flake. Now, Flake and I are the opposite of lovers to enemies. No, wait. Enemies to lovers. We are lovers to enemies. We are in a feud right now, as many of you know. We aren't talking, and it's going to be really awkward when I come on Instant Speed Podcast in a few weeks for the Speedies. But that is okay. We will cross that bridge when we reach it. That burnt bridge. But Flake says, Dash.io is going to do awful. That's my prediction. And as I said before, I think this is a rare occasion where myself and this Canadian man agree, right? This is hope for the US and Canada to make amends. And I think I'm right there with him. I think that Dash.io is just, this is not, it was a flash in the pan, very cool deck, very powerful, will spike some smaller tournaments, but man, the cream really rises to the top at Worlds, so you don't really have that kind of option to kind of like hope to spike with a deck that's so inconsistent, but also very powerful. But Flake's right. I think once the knowledge is out there about the deck and how to beat it, it's easy to plan around it. And we're going to see that. We're going to see that. Next comes from Sigma, who has a couple different... changed his mind halfway through his comment here. First, he says, original Dash, the OG Dash, inventor extraordinaire. Sam Sutherland wins Worlds. Interesting take, right? OG Dash, right? This a little bit more of the consistent, the known, the old faithful here. Sam Sutherland. Don't know a lot about Sam, but Sam could definitely take it. And then Sigma goes on to say, my dark horse is, of course, Rhinar, which we've talked about already. But, ... Sigma says, keeps us on our toes, this Sigma. I'll be bold. And gives a real prediction here. Pablo Pintor on Rhinar. Now, I think we all like to paint Pablo Pintor into some kind of box that maybe plays certain kind of decks, but we've seen him win with Chain. We've seen him win with Bravo. We've seen him win with a lot of different kinds of decks, and Rhinar is, as plain as day, is a deck that is a different kind of deck. So Pablo could do it, and I would love to see that. I mean, just a guy, and Pablo, when he was on the show, I really fell in love with him. You know, it was just, he just has such a great outlook on the game and life and playing a game and realizing it's all about fun. And there's nothing more fun than playing a brute deck sometimes. So, you know what, Sigma? We're gonna pretend like you didn't say the beginning of that sentence. We're going to focus on the end. Pablo Pintor on Rhinar is such a bold prediction, and I love it. And I think it would be huge for the game, right? All of a sudden, people are talking about Pablo again, getting him back into the top echelons of who's the GOAT. You know, we love the GOAT conversation. Sure, it gets old, and as we saw when Erica came on, that we have data on terms of like what can be determined based on results and over time and winnings and stuff like that. But I would love to see Pablo really do it. He is worthy. And you know what? A hometown hero, that's what we want to see. With Rhinar, right before Heavy Hitters comes out, people will be complaining, oh, you know, Brute's going to get too good. Listen, it's always been too good. You've all just been afraid. Okay? Crixus says Dash.io, but I think it'll be more in line with the Melbourne second place deck list, which kind of goes against what Capolo said, right? Which I think would be more expected, right? Dash.io is certainly a deck that really shows its power in that list, and obviously I think it was Thomas Rowling, I'm forgetting the name, who took Melbourne second place with that Dash.io, was a real master at it. We've had a couple weeks with it. Some of the best players in the world should be able to kind of get a real grip of how it's being played, and you have a lot of feature matches to kind of watch and figure out, you know, certain lines that he was able to play. So this is not a bad prediction. If Dash.io is going to do something, it's probably going to be that kind of stock list. So Crixus, that's not a bad prediction at all, though I don't think Dash.io is going to have its time in the sun this weekend. Now we're going to move on to some stuff from Twitter. We only got a couple things on Twitter, and then we're going to say goodbye, and I'm going to tell you who I think is going to win. Mo Bogsley, who has been on the show before and is a real nuisance, and we try to get rid of him, but he remains, but that's okay. We still love him. Mo Bogsley says, if I had to bet on someone, I would put my money on Dagan White. Second time person, I think, in the list so far. Second mention, anyway. And Mo Bogsley says in parentheses, besides me, of course, for hero, I would love to see a Levia come out and ruin the day, which could be the time for Levia. I would not be surprised. we talk a lot about Reinar as the brute that people are looking at, but Levi really has the power output, right? Does not have the ability to fatigue as well as Reinar, but Levi can have some crazy output, and I think I got to imagine some pros are looking at Levi right now. I've even had a pro at a tournament tell me, I think that might be the deck I bring to Worlds. I don't want to tell you who, but his name rhymed with Schmody Schmilliams. Sorry, Cody. Next comes from DM Armada, a.k.a. Stephen Cookus, a.k.a. Cookies with Cookus. I can't bet against cards with M, which is Michael Fang. Now, what hero? That's a different question. Does not answer. That is a different question, and I can bet against Michael Fang. Guess what, Michael Fang? You're going down by somebody. I'm not sure who yet, but I might predict somebody. Thank you for your input. DM Armada, hero would have been helpful, Steven. But yeah, now obviously Michael Fang, Pro Tour winner, excellent player, certainly a favorite going into this weekend. But all that travel's really got to weigh on someone. I can't imagine going to, Pittsburgh to Barcelona. I mean, the two most beautiful cities in the world. Korvax Saga says Viserai, like an RKO from out of nowhere. I know quite a few people who would enjoy Viserai winning. I can't imagine it's true. It's going to happen. But we've seen how powerful that deck is. And I think the on-hits are really good into Dromai, so it could be a deck that does some stuff. I'm not putting a lot of money on it, though. I'm not putting any money on any of this unless somebody wants to get on some action, DM me. But I like Viserai as a pick here. It's the first time we've heard a pick about Viserai. And, it could be it. I think it's the better Runeblade right now, so I think it's better than Vincent. It's aggro, goes wide. It's a proven deck. We can do it. It gets some new toys every once in a while. It's just no Rosetta Thorn. No Rosetta Thorns makes it a little bit of a Rosetta Thorn in its heel or side. I forget what the saying is. Next comes from Oot the Monk, who I play on Talishar all the time. Shout out Oot the Monk. Says Phi. I don't know the player. That's okay. You can make up for DM Armada by giving us a hero. Phi. Like I said, Phi is a great pick. I don't know player. I don't know player either. Don't hate the I don't know player. Hate the I don't know game. As I've always said. Next comes from Charlamiro, who says Florian Christian Lachlan, I think is the name, an Austrian player, has been putting in the work. Now, I know I follow Florian on Twitter, X, and I see the tweets, the ideas, the opinions, and certainly is someone who's very invested in the game and also a great player. So I would not be surprised if we see Florian climb up there into the top 8, maybe even just win the whole damn thing. Thank you for your input, Charlamero. And then Uni Multiverse says, Wizard back-to-back world champs. You read it here first, and you heard it here first. I would not be surprised. As I said, Kano's in a great spot here. Icelander, I think, is probably in a better spot. I think Icelander has a lot of great matchups, except probably Dromai, I guess. It's a little tough right now, but I could see it. Wizard, the best players in the world. If the best players in the world are playing Wizard, they can do the most dirty things in the game on different axes than everybody else is doing it. So it's actually a really safe bet. I think it's a safer bet than you think. And then finally, Machine TV, Kale McCreath on Bravo. Now, I gotta say, Dagan White on Bravo, certainly a force to be reckoned with, but Kale McCreath on Bravo is the force to be reckoned with. This is someone that's been known for Guardian play for forever in terms of the game. Since the early days of the game, Kale McCreath has been the forefront of great Guardian play, and I certainly wouldn't be surprised if someone was going to win with Bravo, Kale McCreath. would be someone I would look out for. So these have been some really great predictions. I don't know, folks. This has all gotten me in a little bit of a tizzy. I was going to give my prediction, and I still am, folks. Are you ready? Can I get a drum roll? Wow, that was a great drum roll. Thank you all for doing it. It is the player that's going to win Worlds. It's Craig Krimples. I'm going to say it right now. I'm only saying this because, while Craig is a local, he's been on the show, top 8 at Nationals, has won many tournaments and other card games. And that's not why I'm saying that Craig's going to win this. I'm saying Craig's going to win this because Craig, last week at Armory, that didn't fire because we were the only 2 that showed up, said to me, I don't feel confident about Worlds. And that to me means he's going to win. Right? I think when you're able to admit that you don't feel confident, that's true confidence. Now, Craig, if you're listening, please don't let me down. I'll never forgive you, but I'll always love you. Folks, that's been the show. I hope you enjoyed. Please check me out, as always, on Twitter/X at freshbudspod, and check out the Buds Discord. Check out the YouTube and all the streaming platforms where you can listen to the show. It is a great way to support the show, the best way to support the show. And I hope you all enjoy the World stream this weekend. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm very excited for it. And I'm excited to see where our predictions end up. I'm super happy with everybody's input, and I really thank you all for doing it. So thank you again. And sure, I did not mention at the top of the show, but we do have a special guest this week. But before we get to him, I do want to talk about some food, because I always like to talk about some food before the end of every show. And this show, I just want to talk about, I went to my anniversary dinner tonight. Not this week, tonight. Also, it was this week. Both can be true. And I got this eggplant dish. Now, eggplant might not be for everybody, but it is for me, right? And this place does like 20 layers of eggplant that they cook for like 3 hours or something like that, in this like almost like eggplant lasagna type thing going on. They don't bread the eggplant. They only put a little bit of flour on it, right? And normally I eat a lot of breaded eggplant, but the fact that it wasn't breaded and still cooked so well gave it like a freshness to it, which was really, really nice. So shout out to eggplant. It's just a great vegetable. And, you know, it's really doing some serious work as some like a meat substitute in a lot of ways. So, and actually, now that I've been talking about eggplant so much, I'm realizing on the other line is our guest Charmer, but unfortunately I just don't have time, right? So I'll just have to get to him another week. So thank you all for listening. Please stay fresh and stay juicy, and enjoy the weekend.